You're going to need some patience now. I'm going to show you what this flowchart looks like in all of the different programming languages that I'm going to show you. And it's the different programming languages that I'm going to show you that you will need to have patience for. I've started one or two programs up and one or two virtual machines just to help you. So I'll be flicking through things and you might not see where I go, not to worry. The whole point of this is that this is no program at all. It's just got a start and an end to the program. And in different languages, it's going to look very, very different. So let's start off with Python, which you're used to. So if we start up the shell, there we go. Oh, I'm going to get some screen problems here. If I want a new program in Python, I choose File, New File. There we go. And that is my start and end. It's finished. It's just a blank file. The only thing I need to do is save the Python file as something. Let's create a new folder here for programs. And I just give it a name like my first. So let's call all of our programs my first, and we'll see where we go. So that is Python's version of, let's see if I can get this back, seems to be messing up the window, Python's version of this, nothing at all. So let's hop over to Java. Now I've had to start one or two of these programs before the video because they just take so long to load, but this is NetBeans, which is the IDE which runs Java. So Java is inside of this. And to start a new Java application, I would choose File, New Project, and make sure I've got a Java application selected. Click Next. It's a little bit different to the way that you did it with Python. Python was really quick. This takes a little bit of time. So I've called my project my first. When I click Finished, I should have a project after a while sitting in the window over here. There we go. My first is here. And what I wanted to show you is that a blank, just start and end, as we did with the flowchart. Actually, when I play around with Java in NetBeans, I've got a lot of code. It's already put a lot of code in for me. That is a blank project, and it's saved, and it's got the name here, myfirst.java. Now I'm going to hop over to PHP. Now PHP, there is no editor, or you could use an editor. I'm just going to use Notepad, and this is my start and end of my PHP program. There is nothing in there. The only thing I need to do, because it's PHP, it will only run in a web browser. It's a web page essentially, and I have to save it in the correct location. So File, Save As. Now I've got to find the correct location, so it's on my C drive. Whoop, that's nearly full. And if I find exam, there we go. And then inside here there should be a folder called htdocs, sorry, which stands for hypertext docs or web pages. So that's where they go. If I create a new folder in here and call the new folder programs. So if I go in there, now I have got my location where I can save it. So I can save it of type PHP. There we go, PHP. The Notepad is is really, really good for saving files of different types. The reason why it does that is because when you're typing, it will try to help you by colouring the syntax, etc., for you to know when you've made a mistake or missed out a bracket or something. So it's quite good for that. So I'm going to save this one as my first.php. So that is start and end in PHP. an absolute blank file. I'm going to now write a file in JavaScript because JavaScript is one of the languages that you can use. And again, for JavaScript, I'm not going to use an editor. There are plenty of editors like Eclipse you can download to help you do this. But we shan't be using it that much, and as we're not doing the project in it, I don't see any reason to download the IDE for it. So I'm just going to use Notepad as my IDE, and I'm going to save my start and end program for JavaScript in the very same way. Save as, and I'm going to save it in this very same folder as I did my PHP, because JavaScript again will only work in web pages. There is a difference between PHP and JavaScript. One of them is server-side programming, that is PHP, and one is client-side programming, which is JavaScript. There we go, JavaScript, and notice that the file extension has changed to JSP. Whoops, that's Java Server Pages, not JavaScript. I can't see JavaScript in there. JavaScript has got a JS file extension. There we go, JavaScript. That's better, JS file extension. So my first.js, and that's a blank start and end JavaScript file. Right, so that was fun. Let's move over now to another machine. We're going back to Windows XP now to see these. And I've got two down here. One of the languages that you were allowed to program in was called Delphi, which I've got on the bottom here, which I will look at shortly. And the other one was, well, like BASIC, this is Pascal, which is the language that powers Delphi. So we will learn Pascal. I think that's important because that will be used in Delphi. So let's put this on the screen. And that's the entire window, that's the entire screen of your computer. And if you're wondering why it's so small, well, this was probably out when your grandparents were first born, and it's only 40 characters across and 80 deep. It's not or 80 characters across 40 deep. It's not very big at all, but it is important. So to create a new file in Pascal, we cannot use the mouse. Okay, we have to use the keyboard, and to use the keyboard I need to press Alt and F for file, and I can move along using the arrow keys, or I could use the shortcut F3 for load, but what I'm looking for is save, because I'm going to save a blank file. So I'm going to press save now, and I'm going to call it now this is going into the TP folder. I could save it elsewhere. I'm actually going to save it in this one. I'm not going to mess around on here, but I have to name my program my first dot pass for Pascal, and that isn't it. That is not a blank file. Yes, we'll overwrite it. That is not a blank file. A blank file in Pascal, rather like Java that you've just seen, has some code that it requires to be a blank file. And this is the way it works. We always need to start off with the name program, and we need a name for it. Now I've just called it my first pass, so I can't use my first again. It would treat my first as a variable. So I'm going to call it my program, and at the end of the line I need a semicolon. Without the semicolon it will give me an error, and this is the reason why I have done it, is because start and end in a flowchart, if you were using Pascal, I need to use the word begin for the start, then my program comes after begin, and then finally I need an end with a full stop, which tells me that is the end of my program. So I'm going to save that one again, Alt and F, and then save. Now, unlike pretty much all of the languages we've seen so far, this is different to Python. Python is an interpreted language. This is a compiled language. In other words, it takes your code. You can't run it straight from here, or it's got to run. It will compile it first. That means it turns it all into machine code, so it works quickly. Interpreted programs never, or when I say never, that's incorrect. They don't make compiled. They interpret it as it goes along, and that makes those languages slower. So in this one, I'm going to choose compile. So if I press my Alt key, Alt and F to get back there, I'm going to run along to compile. And I'm just going to press Enter on compile. And if I've made a mistake, it will tell me. And there it tells me that I've been successful. Press any key. That is an empty program in Pascal. Notice that I've got program, my program, semicolon, begin, and then end. Now I'm going to hop over to Delphi. And in Delphi, we're going to see the same sort of thing. Now, Delphi is not a text-based language, and take a look at this editor. It looks more like the NetBeans version. It is huge. And the idea is behind this is that it creates windows. It's a graphic user interface. We can use Visual Basic, which I will take you through. I know I said I wouldn't, but I will show you some examples of Visual Basic, but it's not a language standing on its own. It's inside the Microsoft applications. So inside Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, there is a version of Visual Basic, which looks very much like this. And I will compare that one later, but I will not be doing a series of videos doing it. I will just rely on Delphi. So Delphi has a set of IDE stuff. It's got project information down here, property information for objects that we can put on the screen, and there is the form. You know this form as a window. All of these dots will go missing and it will just have a blue bar, and these 3 items, no dots. And this is the code that goes with it. And at the bottom, I've got code and I've got diagram. There's a lot to learn just to play around with Delphi, but it is Pascal based. Now, although we don't have the begin and end at the moment for a blank file, we can see that it's got some words: unit, interface, uses, type, var, which we'll come to, implementation, and end. So this is start up here, and this is our end, and notice it's got a full stop. That is a blank Delphi file. So if I choose save now, it's going to ask me for a file name. I'm going to call it my first. And notice that this one is also called .pass. So this is .pass. So when I save something, there it is, my first .pass. This one is also .pass, my first .pass. Both of them are Pascal, although this is a visual version, whereas this is like a notepad, a text editor version. So that is all the languages that I'm going to take you through. This is the only time I'm going to compare them. I will do videos on each as I go through. So when I do variables, I'll show you how to do a variable in each of them. I'll show you how to do a loop in each of them. I'll show you how to do if statements and so on in each of the different languages. If you're confused, not to worry, you won't need to learn all of this for the exam, but it will help you understand some of the aspects of programming. At the moment, for year 11, it would have been nice to have gone through these things with them so that they could get an appreciation of it, particularly for data types. It's more evident in these programs what data types are than in Python. So hopefully we'll get a greater understanding by looking at these different languages, but this is the only time I'm going to do it.